2024 Diversion Authority Finance Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mayor Mahoney. Mayor Carlson. Mr. Steen.
Here.
Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Redlinger.
Here.
Mr. Grimberg.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Reeds. Ms. Madriga.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you, Don. Item number 2 is to approve the minutes of October 23rd, 2024. It's in the package and on page 3.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of October 23 as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3 is to approve the order of the agenda.
Move to approve. Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me, Commissioner Pipcorn, Commissioner Grinberg.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the order agenda move forward with the exception of 7B, which should be tabled to December meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Sorry.
Commissioner
hold on.
Pipcorn seconds. I have a motion and a second to approve the order of the agenda with the exception of item number 7B, which will be moved to the December meeting. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Item number 4 is to approval of the bills. We call on Susan Thompson, Finance Director for the City of Fargo. We're on page 7 of the attachments.
All right, page 7 provides a summary of the bills. These bills have been received through November 13th. The total is $8.2 million. The top two are Cass County Joint Water Resource District, which was some flowage easements were the big ones. Also, the City of Fargo had some storm lift rehabilitation. Any questions on any of the bills?
Any questions, Ms. Thompson? This is an actionable item, Commissioners.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second, please? Is there a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the bills as presented for the total of $8,277,666.69. Is there any further discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
And Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, Don. The motion passes. Item number 5 is the finance report. Again, we go back to Susan Thompson. It is on page 25 of the packet.
Okay, page 25 lists revenue and expenditure, historicals, and also year-to-date actuals. And then page 28 lists the statement of net position. Total assets, including the budget fund, are $302,764,843. Liabilities as of October 31st are $134,157. So the net position, including budget fund, is $302,630,687.
Thank you. Any questions? Anyone?
Mr. Chair,
Please.
I'll move to approve the report.
We have a motion to approve the finance report as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the finance report as presented by Ms. Thompson with a net cash position of $302,630,687. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6 is the cash budget report. We call on Mr. Paul Barthol and it's on page 49 of your packets.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you is this month's report. As you can see, we had another good month of revenues of over $17 million came in, of which $10 million of that was from a legacy bond, from the state legacy bonds. And so to date in this fiscal year, we've been at over $100 million for this year. And so we're working very well to draw that down and utilize those funds for the construction of the project. Also, the sales tax are on target, and so I feel very comfortable at where we're at with our sales tax revenues that way on the revenue side. As for expenses, there are a couple of things I want to go over. Peggy, if you could. Overall, on the level one budget, I think we're tracking very well. You will see some additional costs coming in under the lands as we've been closing out the lands, and then also under the program management and the third-party MOUs. We've been seeing some of that work come in too. So if you could go to the level two, one area that you see there is this cost to date of milestone payments. We're still at just over $1.1 million to the P3 developer. And then as you go down, you'll look at the 37-foot projects and the City of Fargo reimbursements. We're still tracking well there. We've spent about just under $10 million, and we have another potential for this year. I don't think we're going to close all of that out yet this year, so we'll have to carry some of that over. The other thing that I want to highlight a little bit and maybe spend a little time on is the lands and the impacted property mitigation budget. Overall, we're at about 56 million. And so we have just under 8 million to go this year. We'll probably spend all of that. But if you look, there's a couple of numbers that have changed around this month. If you recall, we were over budget on the mitigation and associated infrastructure budget, and now we're significantly under budget on that one by about 4 million. And that is the result of going back in and doing a dive into our cash budget and our expenditures. The accounting team was basically, when a property closed, would assign it to a single entity, whether it was the diversion channel, southern embankment mitigation and associated infrastructure, or the upstream mitigation. With some work with the A2S team and the lands team, we were able to get more granular in that association, especially since we closed a number of large parcels that had properties in both the upstream mitigation area, Drain 27 area, and southern embankment area. And so we've gone through and rebalanced those out. And that's why the cost to date for the year on the mitigation and associated infrastructure, that cost is now in the negative. So we're showing a positive balance there. So it's just the overall cost has not adjusted, but we've just balanced it within those various buckets underneath there and more accurately depicted where the money was actually spent. Some of these larger ones had 15, 18 different properties in one closing, and so we were able to reallocate those. Then on the next slide, I think not a whole lot new on this. We're starting to see, again, the program management is on task and on budget there. I think we're going to be a little bit under. Engineering and design, we still have a couple of million left there. Like I said, I think we'll be either on budget or slightly below that. So those are our big numbers there. And then if we continue on, MOU mitigation, we're starting to see a few more of the utilities come in. And then also the township and MOU agreements are starting to come in here at the end of the year. So to date, we've spent over 114 million this this fiscal year. We still, within our budget, have about another 102 budgeted. However, I don't think we're going to be hitting that number, just looking at what's coming in over the next month. And then if you look at the last is the operations budget, again, tracking on course, and nothing really to mention there. So any questions?
Any questions for Paul?
Mr. Chair.
Please.
Hey, Paul, thanks. So I have a question back on page 52, just so I understand. Is it pretty significant credit of about 3.4 million? That was that balancing. Where'd the charges go to?
A lot of them were into the work package 38 upstream mitigation area. So you'll see that that is actually
38.
this year over budget. But in the
Okay.
overall program budget, we are still under budget for that one line item. So basically what happened if there's a large farmstead that a piece of it was in the southern embankment, let's say, and the majority of it was in the upstream mitigation area, we originally put that towards the southern embankment, but then we were able to find the granularity and separate out between the southern embankment.
Okay, so pretty much the charge and the credit went to the same pool of accounts,
It's,
the land.
it's
and
all
impact
under
property.
lands,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
It's just been reallocated between those subtasks.
All right, thanks.
Additional questions? All right, this is an informational item only. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is the MOUs and agreements. We're going to call on Mr. John Shockley. It is on page 56 of the packet if you're following along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Finance Committee, I only have one item today to present to you. The second item was tabled as at the beginning of the meeting. Today's item is an amendment to the agreement, the infrastructure agreement with Red River Valley Alliance. You may recall a couple of months ago, the authority approved an agreement whereby Red River Valley Alliance would install epoxy-coated rebar in the Cheyenne Aqueduct. And the parties would essentially reserve their rights and claims and proceed. This is an amendment to add additional elements to that. If you look on the second page of the agreement, it is adding some structural elements. Exhibit A, adding additional elements that are defined in the project agreement in which epoxy-coated rebar will be added. So it's a pretty simple amendment from a legal perspective. I did have the technical team review each of the project elements that are identified in Exhibit A to make sure that they matched up with what is contained within the project agreement. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from Mr. Shockley? All right, thank you, John. This is an actionable item.
Move for approval.
Have a motion to approve item A, 7A. Is there a second, please?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the MOUs and agreements, item 7A. Is there any further discussion? Don, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Chair Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson. Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
And Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, Don. Motion passes. Item number 8 is the Diversion Authority Board Approval Contracting Actions. Again, we call on Paul. Attachment is on page 71 of the packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 6 agreements, contract actions in front of you today. 4 of them are master agreements for construction services, so we'll look at those last. The first one that is in front of you is a contract with MRA, the Management Association. This is for the compensation study. So since this is a new contractor and a new consultant, we did not have a contract with them prior, but this is to do the compensation study for the employees and compared for the Cass County as they've been rolled into Cass County. So that one is for $14,625. Are there any questions on that one?
Mr. Chairman, I know at last month's meeting as well, that the timing of some of these decisions that come before the board and the actual work that's being done, are we still on track to have?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and Commissioner Grinberg. Yes, they still are on track to finish that work late December, early January. We really want that in place by the time the new executive director lands here by February 1.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as taking over as chair next year, there'll be discussions to go on with this study before as well. Mr. Benson takes office.
Thank you, gentlemen. Please continue, Paul.
Okay, the second task order is a task order amendment, number 2, for additional consulting services with Program Advisor Services for $467,000. This is the Program Advisor Services is on an annual contract. We have already amended it once to extend them through to 2024. And this is to extend the services through 2025. This is a not to exceed contract, but if if the hours are less than that, we won't pay that out. It's a per hour type contract. This is about a 10% reduction in the budget from 2024 that we see on this one. So any questions on that task order amendment?
Any questions from anyone? All right, please continue.
Okay, then we get into our master agreements for construction services. We have 2 for fencing on-call services. So as part of our lands and property management, we have property alongside of farm fields and that we need to protect. And as part of especially the Drain 27, since it's wetland mitigation, we need to establish the boundaries. And so between the master agreement for fencing, and then on the next page, there are 2 master agreements for sign installation. So these will basically get the contractors on board. It has all the basic language in there, contracting language, invoicing language, insurance language, but as you can see, there is no budget assigned to any of these agreements. Those will be done on an individual project basis through a separate task order that we will send out to these contractors and get quotes for them. We had sent out a general invitation to provide us responses, and unfortunately, we only got 2 responses from these 2 contractors. We are following up to see if we can get additional ones, but we wanted to start the process with these 2 for the signage and 2 for the fencing. So, any questions on the master agreements?
Anyone? Any questions? Okay, thank you.
If I could get a approval on these, either individually or as a group?
Move to approve all of items.
Mayor Mahoney moves to approve all of them.
There's six.
Six of them. Six of them, one on the back page. Six items, A through F.
Or do you want to skip one?
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. So we have a motion and a second to approve the 6 items of the contracting actions. Is there any further discussion? Don, would you please call a roll?
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson. Mr. Redlinger.
Yes.
Mr. Grinberg.
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
And Ms. Madriga.
Yes.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, Don. The motion passes. Item number 9, under other business, is a sales tax update. We call on Paul and Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So this is information that was previewed at the Planning Committee, but this is providing annual sales tax information both for Fargo and for Cass County. This is a request of several members of the board over time just to take a look at how the production of sales taxes looked over time. This is really good historical data, especially for newer members to the Diversion Authority Board. And then following that, we also included just some, not only the month that the tax was collected in 2023 and 2024, but just giving you an idea of what we anticipate in the future in the out years as well. So there's some trend analysis there, a nice histogram. We're happy to answer any questions that the committee would have about this, but just really good information just for the entire committee to see and for the board to see in its packet as well. Really good information, especially for that new board member that would be joining the board, just to kind of get a picture and a sense of what the sales tax has meant to the program over time. So I'll leave it at that, and between Susan and I and Brandy would be happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reddinger. Any questions? Commissioner Grinberg.
Mr. Chairman, so where is the information that talks about the 3 taxes and when they were started and voted and approved by the voters, and when do they expire? Because that was asked last month as well, and I don't see that in these slides. Who has that information?
We can have that information provided. I also have that on the City of Fargo website on those dates. And so, Commissioner, let me get that to you as soon as possible here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that was the intent of, I originally asked for this request, is to start to bring the sales tax that we're collecting, bring it forward so it's fresh on everyone's minds, not only in the meeting this request was made in September, to have a complete package so we understand exactly all the parameters around sales tax for this project. And additionally, as I continue to work with Mayor Carlson and program and our staff, my intent as chair next year will be have this on the agenda every month so that we're visible and talking about sales tax, or at least understanding it month to month on the growth projections, as well as any future decisions that may require enhancement from sales tax for this project. So that was the nature of my request in September, and I think this document is good, but as we create a template, I would also like that additional information so it's full disclosure to the full board.
And I will be happy to send this link out to the committee as well. On the City of Fargo website, we have the information both on the infrastructure sales tax for the city, our half-cent flood control sales tax, and then the half-cent additional flood control sales tax. The expiration dates are 2028 for our 1 cent infrastructure, and then 2084 for the 2 half-cent flood control. So I'll forward this to the committee so you've got that.
Well, thank you. Mr. Chairman, then I request that information be embedded into this document, which can be an evolving document for monthly reporting.
Staff, any response to that request?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to briefly respond. There was a question about when the sales taxes were imposed and how long they will be in place before they sunset. I can answer that question, and I do defer to Paul on the other question. But for Cass County, that was approved by the voters in 2010. That's a half-cent sales tax. Then it was extended by the voters in 2016. That sunsets in 2084. You'll recall, pursuant to the pledge resolution passed by Cass County, that is pledged through the term of 2084. or until such time as all the debt is paid off. For the city of Fargo, one sales tax was approved in, I believe that's Article 321 was approved in 2010, and then 322 was approved in 2012. Each of those are half-cent sales taxes. The voters also extended those in 2016. Those sunset in 2084. Very similar to Cass County, the city of Fargo passed pledge resolutions obligating those two sales taxes through 2084 or until such time as the debt for the diversion project is paid off. The current debt for the diversion project, the longest term debt is the WIFIA loan. That is currently scheduled, I'd have to look, I think it pays off in 2064.
It's on the
Yeah.
other chart.
Approximately 2064. So there is some headroom in the later years to allow for some additional payoff. There is a quarter cent that's in addition to the 1.5, the 2 or 3 half-cent sales taxes by the Cass County and the city of Fargo. The city of Fargo had also pledged an additional quarter cent out of its 1 cent infrastructure tax. That is anticipated to expire in 2028 as part of the sunset. It's up to the city of Fargo if they're going to put that forward to the voters to vote on extending the 1% sales tax. The current indenture, that quarter cent is not pledged after the sunset date because legally you cannot pledge a sales tax after it's sunset because there'd be nothing to pledge. And therefore, that's a discussion for the city of Fargo and everybody involved and what that looks like. So happy to answer any of the basic questions. There is a financing white paper that I had prepared that from time to time we update. Happy to share that. Kind of goes in depth into all of the fundamentals of the financing.
Thank you, Mr. Shockney.
So some additional information on how we actually utilize the sales tax. I mean, these numbers are great. We're seeing growth. We're seeing the income. This is based on our income. But if you look at our, let me zoom out just a little bit. So our cash budget on an annual basis, we utilize that for our sales tax as our income, as the basis of our cash budget. So year on year, up until this year, we've been able to cover all of our expenses with either sales tax or legacy bonds or SRF funds. This year, we're starting to look at a couple of other resources, but our funding resources such as WIFIA draws and actually potentially tapping into cash on hand this year. But part of that, we're going to rebalance and relook at that over the next probably 4 weeks, 6 weeks, as we get to year end and see where we're at with our legacy draws. We may have additional funds remaining in there. I think our last one was for about $9 million, and that put us with about $100 million remaining. And so on a yearly basis, we look at what we have available for cash and how that fits within our budget. And then that has been year on year rolled up into our program budget. And so if you look at our cash position and if you look at the report from the city and our financials, you'll see how much we have collected throughout the program and on the program budget. Then once we get through all of the programming and expenses for construction, then we go into our financial plan. And that's what this is. Basically, this chart shows you the debt that's been utilized or obligations that the authority will have. This is a worst case scenario, assuming that all the, all of the contingency's been spent and some additional, all the funds what's the worst-case scenario through all of this. So if there's some short-term bonds, some subordinated sales tax bonds, some other short bonds to cover short-term debt, and then in the purple, we have our WIFIA loan in here too that we were talking about. And as you can see, the original baseline was about a 1.5% sales tax growth. Pretty conservative, but yet due to the cyclical nature of sales tax, we wanted to ensure that we had a viable project. With some of the costs that we've seen increasing over the last number of years, and some of the other expenses that have come on board, that's crept up to about this 2.8, maybe 3% total growth within the sales tax in that area. And so utilizing the data that we had, that Mr. Redlinger shared, and that's in your packet, we take this histogram and make sure that looking at the cyclical nature of it and utilizing that to ensure that we have a viable program and we are able to repay the debt without having an exorbitant amount of sales tax or utilizing any of our backstops. So I guess unless there's any questions on this, I'd be happy. I know I've sat down with several members from time to time and go through this in depth if you'd like, but.
Commissioner Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you know, there's a couple new faces showing up in the Cass County Commission in a couple of weeks. I say that this is arguably one of the most important things you can show them, because you can get into the nuance, you don't have to with them as well, but this really does simplify where the widgets are being paid for in one simple snapshot. And again, this paired with this information, especially the sales tax graphic that you have too, tells a lot of the story. But the public at large, I'd like to think they know a lot about this too, but I'm sure they don't. These things are incredibly handy, and I'm just grateful you prepared them. And again, educating the two new faces that are showing up here in 2 weeks is of eminent importance, because they'll be decision makers as of December 2nd. Thanks.
No, we've been asked by the co-executive directors to do basically a diversion authority 101 for these new faces. So planning on doing that sometime in December.
Very good. Anything additional? No? All right, thank you. Again, this is an item that was an informational item. Item B of 9B is the second draft of the 2025 cash budget. Again, we call on Paul for that. It's on page 90 of your packet.
So again, this is the second version. This is exactly what you saw last month. We have not made any adjustments to it yet. We are still working through the finalization, updating as many numbers as we can. We will probably come to you in December with a third version. And then at that time, we'll see what for outstanding bills that we have or invoices that we have at that time, and whether we can finalize it off of our third version, or if we need to go into January for a final version, basically to close out the year. But we anticipate we will have a third version in front of you at the December Finance Committee meeting. So no changes from last month, but we're working on getting as much as we can finalized out, and getting as many invoices paid this year, so we have a good forecast as to what for cash we're carrying over and what for legacy bonds we're going to utilize yet this year.
Any questions on the cash budget, proposed cash budget for 2025? Anyone? Okay, thank you. Our next meeting will be December 18th. Does any member of the Finance Committee have anything they'd like to bring forward on a non-agenda item this afternoon? On that? If that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.